Good morning, late morning. You are with Bel and JD on the LITE Breakfast, and today it's Mind Matters Facebook Live with Dr. Joelle Loh, clinical psychologist and director at the Mind Psychological Services and Training. Good morning, Dr. Joelle.
Hi, morning guys. Thanks for having me.
It's always good to have you on.
Morning.
Thank you. Go, son.
The purpose of this entire free clinic, of course, is for you to ask any questions that you might have at all about mental health issues, mental disorders, and Dr. Joelle Loh is right here, right now to answer those questions. And there are several ways that you can ask your questions. First of all, the easiest, of course, is if you put them in the comments down below in your Facebook Live. So just leave a comment for us, and Dr. Joelle will be able to read your question and answer you. Second of all, you can also give us a call because we are back in the studio, 0395433333. That's our studio number. We also have our DG Light line right here, 0165108888, if you want to leave us a voice note or a message with your questions. So get those questions coming in right now. We are ready to answer them. I'm sure Dr. Joelle is raring to go to answer these questions.
Good morning to Prem Kumar, one of our hardcore fans who listens into Mind
Who
Matters.
watches all our Facebook Lives as well.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Prem Kumar.
Yeah. Wow, in the office already. Good morning, doctor, he says.
Good morning, Prem.
All right, so maybe the next time this happens, I think Joel will be ready to come back to the studio already, right? But this has been great.
Yeah.
Actually, how have things been for you since RMCO, and then now things are starting to open up again, and July 1st is a big date for a lot of people because cinemas and pools. What else is opening?
Kindergartens, preschools,
massage parlors that everybody's talking about.
Parlors, yeah. I think my wife is dying from massage. For me, it's been pretty tough, of course, actually. I mean, the kids are going to school online, and they're getting ready to reopen up their schools again.
Yeah.
I think mom and dad's anxiety is higher than the kids' anxiety, right? So we just got to manage that.
Are you worried about sending your kids back to school, especially kindergartens?
Well, I think there's always going to be that underlying fear and anxiety that's going to be there. But I was having a chat with my wife and was thinking, at some point we have to go back. It's not like we can hide away forever in that sense, right? And I think the one plus point is that young kids are not as susceptible to the disease as adults or the elderly, right? So we figured, I think it makes sense because I think my daughter also is like crying out for social interaction, for friends, and just spending time outside of the house, right? Like I think this over the weekend is the first time we went out finally in like 3 months, right, to a mall, and she was like, oh my god, she was like a a tiger let out of the cage, right?
My son too. I brought him out for a haircut over the weekend, and he's like, I haven't sat in the car for so long, and he's like looking outside and like, look, mommy, trees.
It's a strange thing. I mean, like it's so strange that we crave. Like, I think at some point all of us started to get mentally. We were, this is gonna be for a long haul. We're prepared to stay at home, and then we started getting very, very comfortable at home already. But I think the moment we could go out again, it like endorphins. It's good for the. Is it endorphins, or am I looking at the wrong? What is the right word here? What is the right
hormones?
Yeah, the happy hormone. Yeah.
Yeah, endorphins. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So once we got out, I'm like, how did we last 3 months at home? You know what I mean? Because it's just.
But we did.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we have a voice note here actually.
Yes, this is from Sarah.
Yeah. So
let's have a listen.
My husband is being a bit over paranoid about letting kids go anywhere, even at this point in time. It's getting very frustrating because I know the kids are acting up, they are bored at home and have too much screen time. So I really want them to get back into their regular routine again. How can we strike a balance here between being safe and being sane?
Ooh,
that's a great question, Sarah, because I am facing that problem right now as well.
Really?
My husband is a lot more paranoid about letting the kids out than I am. Yeah.
Guys, sorry, technical difficulty. I couldn't hear the message just now. So
Oh,
I'm not
really?
Sure what the question was? Yeah.
Oh, right.
Sorry.
Maybe I should read it out then.
Yeah. You couldn't hear.
Sorry about that.
No worries. What if everybody else could hear? Couldn't hear.
All right. Well, the gist of the question was Sarah's husband is being very overprotective over his children to
Okay,
not
yep.
even let them out at this point in time.
Mm,
So she knows that they eventually have to go back to their own normal routine, and it's not. And she said something about how do you keep a balance between keeping the kids safe and keeping the kids
Yep.
sane, because the kids are just getting too bored at home and going crazy, you know. And they have a
agreed.
lot of screen time as well. That's what Sarah says, and I resonate with that, because my husband's like my son's preschool is opening soon as well, and my husband's like, no, don't send him back yet.
I think this is a really common and frequent question that's going to be asked. I think moving forward, right? I think it's not something that's going to keep being asked until probably end of the year, maybe even next year. Right? And I think because like what JD was saying just now, you know how all of us when we're transitioning to being stuck at home, we were like freaking out. We're saying, "Oh, can I manage?" I think the reverse is also happening now. Right now, that when things are going back to normal, right, we're going to have that period of adjustment as well. We're going to freak out about going back out into the wild, so to speak, right? So I think, and especially with parents, right? Because young kids, we want to make sure they're safe and as safe as we can be, and all these questions about how our kids are going to social distance. You know, my cousin was saying, you know, she refuses to buy them like fancy cute masks because if she does, she's afraid that when they go to school, they'll start exchanging their masks with their friends to say, "Oh, yours is so cute. Can I share yours?" And things.
Oh, really? I've never really thought about that.
Yeah, my cousin's a thinker lah. And I think it's a question that's hard to answer because it's different for everybody, right? So I think that the caller's example was wonderful because the wife, I think, seems a bit more calmer about things and she's ready to let the kids back into the wild, so
Yeah.
to speak, right? But husband seems a bit more anxious and careful. And I think that's a really good analogy for all of us because every one of us will deal with anxiety a different way, deal with the pressures or the worries about sending our kids, our loved ones back into the public differently. In that
Yeah.
sense, right? So there's no real right answer, but I think a general rule of thumb is this. Yeah? There is no such thing as keeping our kids safe perpetually or forever, right? At some point, they're going to need to fall down, scrape a knee, get hurt here and there because it's something that it grows and builds character, helps them grow, and it becomes the adults that they need to be moving forward. Now, I'm not saying put them in the line of fire and bring them to
Or give them,
dangerous
like,
places. It's
let
not
them get COVID, just to learn a
correct,
lesson.
correct. So we take all the necessary precautions like face masks, washing hands, and social distancing and all that, which we should do, right? Of course. But I think if those measures are kept in place and we are doing all we can to make sure that they're safe, there's no reason why we shouldn't allow them back into the public, right? To go to school or whatever, in that sense. Because they also need to learn to reintegrate themselves back into society.
Yeah.
I think there was this one fear that a friend of mine was saying that, my kid has grown up, like she's got a young kid, about 2-3 years old. So she's now that she's becoming more conscious and aware, all of this is happening during the MCO period, right? Compared to, let's say, my daughter who was like out with her grandparents and going out to malls and meeting friends and all that. So he was asking me, will she grow up socially awkward because she's never had that exposure to people, right? During this critical period. And I think that's a very valid point as well. We can't keep them safe at home all the whole time and expect that they're going to be socially okay to integrate later on, right? It can, but it's going to be harder in that sense. So I think we got to strike a compromise. Don't go too extreme, but don't go too careful either. Try and find a nice middle ground that you guys are comfortable with.
But do you have any tips on how we can sort of reintegrate our children into this new norm, by teaching them the SOPs and making sure that they understand why they're doing things that they're doing or they're supposed to do?
Yeah, great question. So my advice is trainer wheels, basically, right? So, like, for example, my daughter, we're gearing her up potentially, when she goes back to school. We don't want to just throw her in the deep end and hope she's going to stay afloat, right? And that's going to be crazy, right? So even though the teachers are going to be there to distance them and make sure they don't hug each other or kiss each other and things like that, we want to make sure that our daughter herself is able to have that in her mind and make decisions on her own as well. So that's why we started thinking about how we can bring her out into the public a little, just a couple of hours at a time, right? And then mommy and daddy is going to be there just to give a narrative, right? This is where we're going. This is why we're wearing the mask. This is why you see the lines on the floor. So we are teaching her on our own, right? Preparing her on our own so that eventually when she does go back to school, yes, the teachers are there, but she also has it in her mind. Okay, this is what mommy and daddy said. We need to keep distance. We need to wash our hands, keep our mask on. So she knows what to do already, or at least some semblance of what to do, in that sense, right? So trainer wheels. Don't expect your child to immediately get it, right? Expect her to fail, expect her to screw up, expect her to make a mistake, take off a mask, hug someone and all. Expect all of that. But we do it in a safe environment first, and then we slowly build her up to a point where she's a bit more independent and she can do it on her own.
But I think it's more about the parents now. How do we get the parents to be more confident to let their kids out? I think the kids are ready to go. It's just getting the parents some confidence that it's not.
Or being over paranoid. How do we get parents to not be over paranoid?
But I think Bel, you probably could resonate with this, right? This is the age-old parent question, right?
Yeah.
Because now it's COVID, right? But you fast forward your kid to when he's 18 or 21 years old, and they're going to go off to college or go on a date or something like that, and then you start freaking out as parents as well. How do we keep our kids safe, right? I mean, that's always the theme of things. How do we keep our kids safe? It's just that you substitute what's not safe, whether it's dating or boys or college or alcohol or whatever it is, right? And this is COVID-19. So it's something that it's hard for any parent, right, to let go in that sense. But at some point, we need to realize that we have to let go, right? A good reflection point is your own self with your parents. Remember the time when your parents were super overbearing and say, don't go to college, you want to go to college, you go to the one next door, you don't go to the Australia or American ones and things like that, right? So remember how that felt like for you and how restrictive it was, how it was like coddling you, basically, right? And remind yourself, you don't want your child to have that same experience. You don't want your child to want to run away or escape because they feel they're being strangled or suffocated like that. Right? So that's a good way to give you some balance. But there's really, again, I said earlier on, there's no good way to do it. There's no right way to do it because everyone's anxiety points are different. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that because now I remember when my mom and dad were very over cautious about me going out and stuff like this when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And now I'm very, very cautious about them going out. I'm like, hey, do you have your mask when you go to the supermarket and everything? It's just changed.
Yeah, it goes out in a circle. I think.
Payback, right?
Yeah. Okay, speaking of anxiety, we received a question from Julie Verena. Can you read out the question?
Julie Verena says, after months of MCO, now I felt uneasy going out to meet so many people at malls. I try to avoid them or avoid going near anyone. Is this normal?
Yeah. Brilliant question, Julie. Very normal, very common, and I think it's going to be a while before we get used to it, right? I think it doesn't help that, every single media source that we've had, be it TV or radio or internet or whatever this has been just broadcasting messages of stay away, keep your distance from people, wear your mask, be careful, you don't know, COVID-19 is asymptomatic and all that kind of things. So it's natural for that fear to be at the top of our heads. It's very, we're being very aware about it, basically, right? But given enough time, and I think it's something that you need to persevere with. Don't stop yourself from going out. Make sure you keep going out. Make sure you do keep going out and interacting with people, for example. And then eventually that fear will go back down to normal, right? So the idea here is we don't want to be unafraid of COVID-19. We still want that little modicum of fear or carefulness about it. But we don't want it to overtake our lives, basically, right? So it's completely normal, Julie. Just make sure you keep going out. Don't stop, right? The instant you stop going out and you don't want to go out, then it's going to be problematic, because it's going to be very hard for you to get out the door then, right? So just keep plugging away, it'll get better over time.
Now, if you have any medical questions, well, not medical questions, mental health questions at all to ask Dr. Joel, he's here with us on our special edition of Facebook Live Free Clinic. You can comment on this Facebook Live and we will read out the questions for Dr. Joel to answer. Or you can even send us a voice note on our DG LITE line 016-510-8888. And because we are in the studio, you can also give us a call, 0395433333 on our studio line right here.
To ask, watching those Facebook Live
to ask Dr. Joel any questions that you might have on mental health issues, mental disorders, whether you are experiencing something yourself or for a friend. And if you wish to remain anonymous, of course, we will respect that as well. So just send your questions in right now. Now, Darren Kidd also sent us a question via comment.
Yes, it says here, how do I overcome fear at work? I suppose, because it might be an MCO-based question. People are going back to work and people are... The SOPs, you might follow the SOPs. You're afraid other people might not be following SOPs. How do you overcome that fear?
I think similar to Julie just now, right? I think it's something that you need to I think it's exposure, like basically, like, right. So, like for example, the first time we learn how to drive, obviously we're super hyper aware about everything around us. We're super anxious and generally quite skittish, lah, right? When cars come too close, motorcycles come too close, and all that. But eventually, we spend more time in the car. We become more used to it, or we understand what the parameters of safety are, lah, right? So, what are the limits that we can push, for example, right? So same goes when you go to work and you realize that there are maybe some colleagues that are more nonchalant about face masks, for example, or touching and things like that. So you start to identify, or you start to map out the office and see what the situation is like. And I think naturally what will happen is you gravitate to people who are like-minded to you, like, in that sense, who are, let's say if you're more cautious, for example, then people who are more careful and more, they want to be more, follow protocols, so to speak, about things, right? So that's something I think, Darren, you just keep going to the office, right? And immersing yourself in the experience, and finding out how to navigate things that way. I think when we try and project, or we try and anticipate, or hypothesize what's going to happen, is this going to drive us crazy? Because there's so many possibilities, there's so many chances for things to go crazy, like that sense, right? But in actual fact, when you actually go to the hospital, it's not going to be hospital class. Sorry, go to the office. Sorry, you have a range, like, there are people who are really nonchalant about it. There are people who are super hyper aware about it, and super hyper conscious about it, right? So you need to find where your niche, where your spot is, right? Another thing that you can do is to speak about these fears and concerns to either your superiors or your colleagues, so at least they have an idea of where you are at as well, right? So sometimes people, they don't wear masks because they feel that it's not an issue. But if they know that their friends or their colleagues are skittish about it, they will honor that, they will respect that and put on the mask themselves, right? So to make you feel comfortable, right? So that's definitely an option you can try out as well, right? And the last one, I think, is just to learn some really good techniques how to manage our own anxiety, right? So like breathing techniques that you can find out on YouTube, for example, deep breathing techniques. So that's a really good way just to help us manage the anxiety in general, right? So let's say your fear in the office isn't COVID related, it's KPI related, for example. So you can learn breathing techniques, for example, and also keeping a thought diary as well, just to analyze the thoughts that we have. Some thoughts that we have, probably about 60% of thoughts we have sometimes don't make sense, or it's irrational. 40% of thoughts are valid and factual, right? So if we really knuckle down and look at the thoughts that we have, we realize that it's a lot more of this irrational fears that drive us rather than rational fears. Then it's a good way to help narrow the field a bit and see it's easier to manage that way. Some good tips that you can try out.
But at what point do you say that maybe this job is not for me? It's giving me too much anxiety that I cannot control it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question as well. And honestly speaking, that I think there's two ways to do about it. One is the gut instinct, right? There's some places some places you go to, some things that you do. The instant you walk into the door, you go, something's up, right? Something just funky is going on. It just doesn't feel right, maybe it's first time jitters and all that. But if after a week, a month, you still feel that in your gut, it's a pretty good chance that that job isn't right for us, And I say that with some confidence because there are some things that us as humans, right, we know. How do I put it? Subconsciously we know it, but it's hard for us to verbalize it, right? So sometimes we just have to listen to our gut and say, okay, I don't think this is the right place for me, right? The other way, the less instinctive way they can do it is to do a very simple pros and cons analysis, like that sense, right? Take out a piece of paper, split it in half, left side pros, right side cons, and just list out all the positives that you have in the job and all the negatives that you have in the job as well, right? And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a simple matter of mathematics. If you have 10 positives and 2 negatives, then it's pretty good reason for you to stay in the job, right? Especially in this kind of climate where the economy is unstable and job prospects are a bit funky and things like that, right? But at the same time, you don't want to knuckle down and force yourself to be in the job, and then your mental health deteriorates because of that. So you got to find a balance,
Yeah, because sometimes it's not just about the job or sometimes a lot of people I know for a fact they work in an office tower and they love their job. Their office is absolutely fine, but then once they go to the office tower and then you see everyone without masks, and let's say you're OCD about stuff, and then that stresses you out. Then you speak to your boss, and then maybe your job requires you to be in the office all the time. I don't know. So at what point do you go, I need to speak to HR? I still want this job, but mentally it's affecting me already. I'm anxious. I get nervous breakdowns and I get angry all the time. Right?
I can't function.
Yeah.
I think if that's the case, if it's affecting you to that level, then I think that is the right time to talk to HR and see what can be done, right? Some companies that I've worked with, what I've heard of is really quite cool. They've got staggered arrival times and staggered departure times. So like everyone comes in like 15-minute blocks or half an hour blocks, right? So then it's really staggers and coordinates the people's movement in and out of the building, right? That's one option. I've also heard of some HRs allowing certain staff who are more affected by the whole COVID-19 in terms of the anxieties and fears to come in and come in at odd hours. So if work starts at 9, for example, they'll come in at like 10:30 and then they leave an hour and a half later, right? Just to accommodate some of the fears and concerns that they have. So if you're struggling, I encourage you to go talk to HR, talk to your boss and see what can be done. I mean, I'm sure people understand and there are flexibilities that can be built in, right? So you can try it out and see.
How do I do that with me? Like Bel comes in at 6. Can I can I come in a bit later? Maybe talk to my bosses about that. Maybe we can come in at 10 o'clock. Maybe. Okay. Anyway, moving on.
I get in at 5:30 every day. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe we should stagger our coming. Okay, it's a Mind Matters Facebook Live free clinic, and we're with Dr. Joelle Low, clinical psychologist and director at the Mind Psychological Services and Training. Call us at 03-9543-3333, or you can send in your question on the Digi Light line 016-510-8888. In fact, we actually got a voice note from John, and
Okay, John's question is this. My girlfriend's father, who is usually very grumpy and critical of everything, has suddenly developed a more pleasant personality, being quite jovial even. We've spoken to her mom about it, and she had nothing to do with it. He started acting this way once MCO lifted, but my girlfriend is very concerned because he was never jovial. She's concerned all this is for show and he's putting on a front. Like, I've heard people who suffer from depression often try to hide it by going in the opposite extreme. Should she be concerned? I mean, for a sudden change in personality.
He's happy. What's wrong with that?
He's not depressed. He's suddenly happy.
Yeah.
Right. I guess to answer JD's question, I'll flip it around. If someone suddenly becomes super depressed or super sad or super melancholic, for example, it will be cause for concern, right? But I think, you know what, the voice callers' concerns, I think, are valid, but I'll caveat that, right? I think if it's something that's positive and it's and you don't see any outward signs of a struggle or the fact that when they're with you they're super jovial, but the instant everyone leaves you catch him like frowning or tearing up, for example. If there's no obvious signs of that, I think I wouldn't be too worried for now, right? I think I would probably sit back and just see what happens, basically, right? And the reason why I say that is because everyone can change. Everyone has the propensity to change. There's no such thing as what's the saying? How does the saying go? No, old dogs can't learn new tricks or something.
Yeah.
That doesn't apply in that sense. I've seen people who are 80 or 90 with massive paradigm shifts in the way they live their lives, and it's better for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it could be that this whole MCO thing put things in perspective for your girlfriend's dad. How about how we manage anxiety, how being grumpy is only going to get you so much done. Why bother, that kind of thing? Maybe, I don't know, right? So I would say kick back and enjoy it for what it is and appreciate that the shift has happened, the change has happened, right? But like I said, keep an eye out just in case, right? And it's also warranted for you to just go ask him, hey, Dad, you've changed, you've become more positive, less grumpy, and just ask him, how are things? What's up? What's going on? And I think that's a perfectly warranted, okay question to ask, and just check and see and make sure that nothing is going wrong in that sense, right? So I wouldn't be too worried, but if you do see signs of struggle or like slight things or like signs of breaking, for example, then I probably want to do a bit more. But until that happens, I think just appreciate it for what it is.
But is it dangerous to ask an older person why are you acting this way? Because I know what they're gonna say. Angry, you're not happy. Happy, you're not happy. What do you want?
Well, I think going into that and anticipating that's the response you're gonna get is gonna help you. That's number one, right? But frame it in such a way it's a celebration. Don't be suspicious about it or interrogative about it, right? Go into it being it's a celebration, right? Go into it saying, like, for example, hey, Dad, you know what? I realized you've been so much more positive, so much more upbeat, and I think it's fantastic. We love it. There's so much more better energy around you in the house. I'm wondering how did that happen? Maybe I learned a thing or two from you, for example.
Yeah.
So it's all about how you frame or you present the question to him. If you go into it in a very interrogative way, saying, how come you're so happy? Suddenly what's going on? Then sure,
something's going on. But is it true that the
personality change?
Yeah, and also that, because we've heard of all these celebrities who are very happy people, happy, joy, but then they had issues with depression. Does it come about suddenly? Is it something that happens?
No. So, like, okay, so I know in recent years we've had a lot of celebrity deaths, like through suicide and things like that. Right? I think Robin Williams is one of the more uh, prominent ones, right? But he's been struggling with bipolar disorder for a while, if I memory serves me correctly, right? And bipolar disorder is something where you oscillate between depressed stages, where you're really down and out and melancholic and things like that, and manic stages, which is Robin Williams, right? When he's a comedian, comic on stage, for example, he's doing his shows and he's just a giant ball of energy and can't contain him, right? A lot of times, creative people do have this because that's what they thrive on, the manic energy for them to create songs or create scripts or act and things like that, right? So in that instance, it doesn't happen all of a sudden. It's something that's ongoing. Like they have these oscillations between the depressed stage and the hyper stage, right? Now, for the caller's dad, for example, if he is bipolar, like, hypothetically speaking, like, the caller would have realized the changes over time. You will know when there's a depressed stage that goes through, and then there's a hyper stage that goes through. It's quite you can't hide that. Like, it's quite obvious one usually, right? So unless your dad's been showing those kind of oscillations, I don't think it's that, right? But if he has, then I'll probably be worried, because after the manic stage they're gonna like crash, right? And then it gets pretty bad after that sometimes, right?
But
if
when
not, then I
but when it
think,
comes to depression, right, doctor?
Yeah.
Do they have this sudden personality change sometimes?
Sometimes if there's a trigger, so let's say death of a loved one, for example, or losing their jobs, right? Let's say their identity is their job, right? Then that can cause a very significant change into how they are in terms of the positivity, the way they relate with people and things like that. But if it's something of more of a slow burn one, then you probably won't even realize it. But usually if there's a sudden change, there's a big trigger one.
Right. But isn't MCO and lockdown and COVID a pretty significant trigger, though?
It can be. But again, if we come back to that individual perspectives kind of thing, like you two, right? You guys are functioning pretty well. You guys are positive, upbeat.
Well,
Liverpool won, so that we should celebrate that as well, right?
It might just be a front.
Yeah.
maybe. But like I said, like, different people will have different triggers. So
Yeah.
some people lockdown was very triggering. Some people lockdown they thrive. I've got some introverted friends who are like, yay, that's me to settle for the next 3 months, right? So it's really a matter of perspective, right? Like Liverpool winning as well. Like, some people get triggered by JD, right? Some people celebrating. Yay,
Had
happy,
to bring
right?
that up. Oh my goodness. Oh
I had to,
Lord.
I had to.
No, I'm depressed. Okay.
I had to see that backdrop of yours for like 3 weeks in a row.
Let's just say hello to some of the people who've just joined us on Facebook Live with Dr. Joel. This is our free clinic for Mind Matters. If you have any questions on mental health issues or mental disorders, you can send them on to our comment section on our Facebook Live right now, and Dr. Joel will answer them straight away. Marianne Francis said that she
I don't
went
think that's
out.
a question.
Yeah, it was just, she said she went out for the first time yesterday and the world still looked the same.
Yay, good.
What were we expecting, right?
Unfortunately, still just as polluted. you
Yeah.
know? So sometimes I think we need to do something about that. What else do we have going on?
How about Liz Hodges?
Oh,
Liz.
yes.
Hey, Liz. You have a question?
Hi there, Dr. Joel. What should I do to overcome my emotions to some friends' actions that they don't treat treat me like they used to, for the fact that they hurt me? It's affecting my health. It's affecting my blood pressure, especially. So she wants to know how to deal with that.
Okay.
Maybe they're not really your friends.
That's
I guess when
Well,
your
I
friends
think
hurt you, what do you do, right?
Yeah. So I think there are a few things here that we need to tackle, because it's a really big question list. And it's a good question as well. So like what JD said earlier, maybe they're not really your friends. Sometimes that could be true, right? Because unfortunately, like it or not, there are some people out there who are friends with people because of what we can give them, right? So as long as we are of benefit to them, then they stay friends, right? And the instant we are not, then they might shuffle off, or they might start ghosting you and things like that, right? So that's one definite possibility, and that's important, because sometimes we need to recognize that there's only so much we can control in our lives, and other people is definitely something we can't, right? Don't say friends, our own family members, our own kids also we can't control, right? And I think that leads me segues into my next point, right? So a lot of times the sadness and the hurt that we feel also really boils down to the expectations and the impressions that we have of people. So let's say, for example, I think that JD is my BFF, right? For example, right? And I think that he's going to be with me through thick and thin. It's my expectations that I place on him, right? That I assume that he's going to take on that role. But I don't know what JD thinks. JD might think that, I'm just Dr. Joel who does the show a couple of weeks. I'll be next to him for 2 weeks and then that's it. I don't see him again, right? Not that I'm saying that happens. Like, JD, I love you. I'm sure you love me.
That's
but
exactly what is in JD's mind.
He just slammed me for the Liverpool thing. But okay, anyway, yeah.
Hypothetically speaking,
Right.
So it's really our expectations and our thoughts that we project onto other people that really bugs us when it doesn't go the way we want it to, right? So we can assume, we can hope, we can expect things of other people, but when it doesn't happen, then we feel bad about it, right? So I think, Liz, in your case, right, I think I'm really sorry you went through the experience. It sucks, right? I've had friends who left me before and it sucks completely, right? But I think it's important to remember that half of it, or maybe even 60% of it, really comes from our own expectations that we project onto our friends. So we learn how to manage it. So in the sense that, for example, all the friends that we have, if we look at it as these are people who are close to me, who are good to me, but I understand that they're going through their own stuff and they have their own reasons for doing their own things. So it's more of we put it 50-50 like in that sense. Like I project my stuff into them, but I also understand where they're coming from, right? That gives us that barrier to make sure that if they do leave, for example, it's not going to be as bad as if you project 100% your expectations and hopes of this person and then they leave after that. Yeah. So that's one way to sort of kind of manage it a little bit. Yeah.
But it's affecting her blood pressure even.
Yeah. I think when you get upset over something, especially when it's something so critical, right? Especially with a really close friend, and suddenly they ghost you, for example, it hurts. It's like losing a partner, losing a lover, losing a spouse, for example. It's gonna hurt a lot, right? And naturally, because of that, your people will spike. But again, it's the level of importance that we place on this person. If this person was, let's say, a security guard, let's say, like for example, in your condo or in your office, he or she says good morning to you every day, and then suddenly one day they stop, right? The level of importance that we attach to the security guard is probably going to be less than a BFF, right? So if the security guard ghosts us, we're wondering why did I offend this person, but it's not going to affect us as much as a BFF would, in that sense, right? So again, it's a matter of perspectives here, right? So the more list you're able to evaluate or just go through the list of friends that you have and just try and get a more balanced approach to see how you see them or how you project onto them, I think it'll be healthier for you in the long run, potentially.
And speaking of perspective, if you look at it the other way around, could Liz, and I'm not saying that she is, I'm just saying, could Liz be oversensitive and maybe her friends are just trying to advise her on some things, and then it just doesn't, because some people, I read it somewhere that some people have a victim mindset. I'm not saying Liz has it. I'm just wondering. Could it be that some people are trying to genuinely help her, but because she's not ready to accept that kind of advice?
I think the common balance is oversensitive, but for me, I don't think it's not so much oversensitive. I think people are sometimes more acutely aware about the relationships they have in their life. Some people are like that. They thrive on having good, solid emotional relationships with people, and that's how they live their lives in that sense. And for these people, their empathy levels are through the roof, right? They can sense even something, even slightly off, so they can realize it as well. So naturally, for people who are so empathetic, who are so sociable, right, the instance there is some disruption to that, or someone who leaves or violates their idea of what a relationship should look like, right, they're going to react, because naturally that's where they derive a lot of their identity and their pleasure from, in that sense. So I don't think it's oversensitive. I think it's just how they're built, in that sense. They like to have preserved relationships. They like to keep good relationships going, in that sense. But you're right, it can happen sometimes. Because it could be just that, the other person is struggling. Maybe now it's RMCO, that your friend has kids, for example, they're trying to prepare them to go back to school, and she's just super freaked out and super worried. So she just needs some time to process on her own. So it's nothing to do with you, it's them, right? So, but because, let's say someone who's oversensitive or empathetic, they don't think about that. They always think about how I messed up, how I screwed up, how my relationship is broken, rather than what's going on with the other person, for example, right? So it could be something like that that's happening as well.
But doesn't that sound more selfish than empathetic? Like putting yourself in everyone's world, sort of? Not in someone's shoe, but like I am the center of everyone's world.
Yeah.
Doesn't that sound more selfish?
I think it's really how you use it, right? Because empathy it's a double-edged sword, right? Like the more you are able to read someone else or understand or put yourself in someone else's shoes, the more you can understand. Technically speaking, more you can understand what the other person is going through. But if you use that in a wrong way, or you mutate it in such a way where, oh, maybe they're doing that because they don't like me anymore, for example. That's one of the possible alternatives or scenarios, correct? So it's really how we use the information, whether we want to use it positively or negatively, right? And all of us does that. Like, for example, those really charismatic leaders in history, like Hitler, for example, he's very charismatic. You can use your charisma for good, or you can use your charisma for bad, right? So you get to, there's still that deciding point or decision factor, where you yourself have to decide what you're going to do with the information.
Okay, understood. Now we received a message on our DG LITE line. This is from Carol. She's concerned about her daughter because she is hardly eating anymore and she's close to being extremely underweight. She obsessed with her size and she still believes that she is fat. What can I do to help her? Well, Carol did not mention the age of her daughter.
Okay. Let's assume it's someone still under your roof, right?
In her
I think,
teens, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. So if your child is young enough, under age of 18, then obviously you have a lot more legal control over what happens. So you can mandate that the child seeks medical attention or medical help, right? But if someone's older, who's like 21, for example, then your ability to do so diminishes, of course, right? This is something that's actually quite common. We get quite a lot of inquiries about this, and I think there's a really big issue with the whole idea of eating disorders and then the idea of fat and thin and all that. So medical practitioners will tell you there is an ideal weight range for everyone to be in according to your height and according to your fat index and things like that, right? But because of the way our society is, we glorify thinness, we glorify size zeros and things like that, right? We glorify certain body shapes and things like that. Because of that, right, people are more motivated to go past or beyond that healthy level, just so that they can meet society's standards, so to speak, right? And because of that, a lot of times eating disorders and all that, they go unnoticed or unchecked, so to speak, because people actually praise you. When you lose like 5 kilos, for example, people say, "Hey, dude, you look great.
Slim
You look
already,
fantastic."
yeah.
Correct. During Chinese New Year, Hari Raya, that kind of thing. Right? So I think because of that, right, these kind of things are hard to even call people out. So if I have a kid, for example, and she's losing a lot of weight, because of all the positive attention it's getting, the instant I try and jump in and say, hey, you know what, I think it's getting a bit over the top, it's a very good chance that my daughter is going to turn around and say, that you don't understand, you're being too traditional and things like that, right? So it's going to be very difficult, and I can empathize with the caller's concerns there, right? Now, in terms of what you can do, I think, as per my usual, right, I think educating your child is really, really important. So information about body dysmorphic disorder, that's when you think you're fatter or smaller than what you think you are, right? It's not grounded in reality. And also anorexia, bulimia, the usual eating disorders, for example, just letting them know as much as they can. Sometimes teenagers, young children, they actually start having anorexia and bulimia-like symptoms and they don't even know about it because it's something that they concoct in their own heads. But when they start realizing that there are many, many people who suffer through that and it's a problem, it helps them understand themselves better, and then they can help them, hopefully, snap them into the realization, okay, I need help. Yeah. So that's definitely the best way you can go about it. That through education, through sharing, letting them know that I'm open to talk, then they come and talk to you. The second one is if it gets really too extreme, to the point where they're having fainting spells, for example, they're having problems speaking because they're throwing up so much, then I think at that point we can evoke medical assistance, right? So then we can send them to the hospital and say, you know what, you can't take care of yourself. We need to make sure that you're okay physically. That's not ideal, definitely not ideal, because then there's going to build a lot of resentment between you and your child. But at some point, we need to decide what's more important, her physical health or the relationship that we have. And it's not an easy question, it's a crappy question to answer. But sometimes we have to make that hard decision just to keep our loved ones safe, unfortunately. Right? So yeah, I think that would be something my responses. Yep.
Besides losing weight, right? What are some of the symptoms that we can look out for a child or someone under our care who is struggling with bulimia or even this body dysmorphic disorder that you were talking about? Like, besides just seeing them lose weight and not eating.
Yeah. So losing weight is the most obvious one usually, right? Other things that you can look out for are scars on the knuckles or the back of the hands, because like sometimes when they want to evoke puking, they might stick their finger down their throat, so it scratches against the top of the teeth like this, right? So sometimes you can see scars there, for example. Where they have like really bad sore throats or their voice changes because they keep throwing up, and then
The acids.
what call it, acids and all mess up your throat and things like that. When they have really what's the word, irregular toilet what do you call it, toilet movements.
Right.
I guess, right?
Okay.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing as well. Energy levels, if they're constantly tired, constantly lethargic, if they're having like falling asleep, like at a snap, for example, instantly sit down and fall asleep. That's also a good example. For the body dysmorphia, through the way they speak or through the way they see things, if they're really wearing like really, really tight clothes already and they say, oh, you know what, look, I'm so fat, I still look so fat. Those are the other things that you can look out for. Yeah. So those are some other signs that you can identify. Another one is their behaviors as well. So when they're eating, one of the more typical or traditional symptoms that we look out for with someone with anorexia is the way they eat their food. So we notice someone cutting up their food into really, really tiny pieces and then eating like really tiny pieces at a time. That's usually a delaying tactic, so they can spend the same amount of time but they eat less, right? So they restrict their food, the kinds of food that they eat as well. If you notice that they drink a lot of more soups, like thick soups, like mushroom soups, or like thick coffees and smoothies because it fills them up, but it's less calories, for example. That's also another good sign. Again, don't be too hyper aware or hyper cautious, right? Don't the instant someone does that, you say, "Oh, you got anorexia."
Yeah.
But it's a pattern of behaviors,
Yeah, but where does it start though? I mean, like, some of these cases are pretty extreme already, and you see the skin and bones and whatnot already, and then you see the scars on the knuckles and everything. But where does it start? Where should we start to be concerned? Because sometimes people fishing for compliments could be something that it just starts right there, right? How do you think I look? Yeah, but you want people to say nice things about you, and when you don't get that instant gratification, does it trigger something inside?
Yeah, they can definitely, or not even that. You just aware of your surroundings. You know? All my slimmer friends or friends who have lost weight have gotten a lot of positive attention from people. I want that as well, right? So it can be even indirectly affect you that way, like in that sense, right? But JD, you asked a really good question, and this is a question that kills a lot of my friends, right? There is really no good answer to it.
Yeah.
You have households where you have like sisters and siblings and brothers in all the same household. Out of, let's say, 3-4 of them, only one of them has eating disorder, right? So if you want to say it's a family kind of thing, it's not, right? You go to some schools, the whole class, maybe like half of the people in class have some kind of eating disorder or body dysmorphic disorder, right? Why does that happen? There's no commonality other than being the same class, right? So it really is hard to answer that question because, and actually, to be fair, any mental health disorder, like why does it happen? No one.
There's
knows,
no cause, right?
Yeah. Correct. It's so different from everybody, like in that sense. Like. Some people could be as simple as, I've heard of this before. This person had food poisoning and was throwing up and having diarrhea for like a week straight or something like that, right? And they lost a lot of weight because of it, and they got a lot of positive comments because of the food poisoning. And it's like, oh, cool, I can keep doing this, right? It's this warped, mutated lesson that they learn in their heads, right?
Yeah.
So they just carry on doing it. They take laxatives, they throw up and whatnot, right? So it's really hard to tell where it starts from in that sense. Just too many possibilities, too many reasons.
Imagine that food poisoning diet.
I'd rather not imagine that. We are with Dr. Joel Low, clinical psychologist and director at the Mind Psychological Services and Training. Is the Mind Matters Facebook live free clinic. So do call us 0395433333 because we are back in the studio. You can call us and then we will answer and then we will get the question over to Dr. Joel. He will answer it for you. Or Bel's holding on to the LITE line. Yes, it's an actual phone. The number is 016-510-8888. Send us a message and Dr. Joel will answer from the question that we read out. Or you can even send us a question via
the comment section.
Yes.
On the Facebook Live. That will be the easiest, actually. Then we can read it out there and then, and Dr. Joel will be able to answer it for you. We receive another question, Dr. Joel, on our DG LITE line. This is from Ruben. I have serious trust issues because of my history, and my friends are asking me to go see a therapist. But how can I trust a therapist when I don't even trust anyone anymore?
He does have trust issues.
It's interesting. Like, how does someone with a trust issue get his trust issues fixed if he doesn't trust even the therapist, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's a really good question, and I think that's something that actually a lot of people do struggle with, right? And I think the best answer to that is, as professionals, as a mental health professional myself, like for me, I'm a clinical psychologist, right? If you go on to the Malaysian Society of Clinical Psychologists webpage, for example, there's a guide of ethical guidelines that we follow, like SOPs, protocols that we follow, right? And built into it is that whole idea of trust, right? Or at least the idea of trust. So one of the things that we do is that we guarantee confidentiality for our clients with certain exceptions. And these exceptions usually have to do with the idea of harm. So if someone's harming you, or you're harming someone else, or if you're harming yourself through
Right.
suicidal behaviors and things like that, then we have to break confidentiality. Or if it's a legal case, like some of the court subpoenas or something like that, then we have to release the notes, right? But short of those two situations, everything that you share with us is confidential, and it's something that's dictated in our ethical guidelines. What that means, right, basically is that if I do breach your confidentiality, and let's say I accidentally say something on air or with my friends or whatever it is, and we find out, you can take me to court. I'll lose my license and I can't practice anymore, right? So that's one of the ways you can use to try and reaffirm that trust in the work that we're doing in that sense, right? Another good way you can go do it is to canvass the therapist that you're wanting to see. By that, what I mean is you ask people who've seen them before, have a chat with them, call up the center and say, hey, you know what, I want to see Joel, can I speak to him and ask some questions, for example? And you can kind of get a gauge on how they do their practices and what kind of guidelines they have, for example.
Like going through a
How-
portfolio of work in a way.
Yeah, in a way. Like if you go on to a lot of private centers in Malaysia, right, they'll have their therapists' profiles there listed anyway, so you can see who they are, what they do, their affiliations and things like that, right? So that's another good way to try and understand or feel more assured. But at the end of the day, all of this is null and void if you're not even going to try, right?
Mm.
So I think if you do all those kind of work, then the next best thing is to try one session and see, right? Us therapists, we're very cognizant about the fact that, when I see a client for the first time, it's not going to be a match made in heaven all the time.
Yeah.
Never, right? I've got clients who come see me within 10 minutes, say, you know what, I don't feel you, I want to see someone else. Totally fine, be totally okay about it, right? So if you go see a therapist and you find that it's just weird or funky, I don't want to see this anymore, end the session, it's fine. Try and find someone else, either in the center or somewhere else. Another place in that sense, right? So try it out and see, get a feel for that person, I think nothing beats spending some time with that person to gauge and see whether you can trust them or not.
But how do you overcome trust issues
Exactly.
in a therapy session if that person doesn't even trust?
That's a barrier.
Yeah,
right
like
there.
he
Yeah.
already has a wall built up.
So speaking from a therapist point of view, so if I had a client like that, right, I'll have the client come in and we'll start talking. Then immediately the first thing that I want to do after we've done through the niceties and the protocols and all that is to start understanding where that trust issue comes from. So I'm not even going to say trust me. I'm not going to even say that. Right? I'm just going to try and understand. You've got trust issues. You don't trust me. Totally get it. Let me understand where that comes from, right? Because obviously it's a defense mechanism that this person has for some reason. Maybe he's been scorned by someone, got severely cheated by someone, for example. So I want to try and understand where that's coming from. Again, you don't have to trust me; it's totally fine. But I want to see where that's coming from and see whether I can understand where it's coming from and see whether we can do something about it or not. Again, I can't make someone trust me. There's no way on earth you can make anyone trust you,
Yeah.
right? But the best I can do is to be my most genuine self, my own most congruent self for you. And if you choose to trust me, great. If not, then let's try and find you someone who would you feel more comfortable trusting in that sense,
Okay.
right? So that is not something we can do. I can do for you, and for yourself also, it's not something you can flick a switch and say, okay, I want to trust Joel now, for example. You can't. But spending time learning that person, understanding that, at the end of the day, worst come to worst, absolute, break class in case of emergency, you can report this person and get this person in trouble, right? I think that's the kind of reassurances that we give our clients.
Now, the thing is, I have trust issues with a lot of things because there have been...
You've been betrayed.
I've been
People
betrayed.
have hurt you.
Yeah, or even something simple as friends calling me up, old friends calling me up, and then going out and say, "Let's just go for coffee." And turns out that he wants to sell me insurance or something like that. It's things like that, It's simple things like that, but it isn't a problem for me. It doesn't affect how I live my life. But at what point does it become a mental health issue that someone goes in and I can't work here. I don't trust my boss. I don't trust this. I don't trust the computers to do well. Everybody's going to get my, where's that line?
Yeah. So what you've described, JD, was basically paranoia already. So when we get to a point where we're so paranoid, where we literally cannot trust anybody in our lives, then that's definitely a major issue. That's like end of the spectrum kind of thing, right? So I think bringing that line back down to the more practical day-to-day kind of things, right? I think if your lack of trust or inability to trust people makes it so that you cannot form significant relationships, right? So let's say you're single and you're trying to date people and you can't because every single person you think they're going to cheat on you, for example. if it comes to a point where it causes friction between your family members, because everything that they do, you want to check on them, make sure they're not, I don't know, having an affair, for example, or taking the car for a joyride, or stealing your money. When it starts really disrupting the way you live your life, I think that's the line that we draw, in that sense. Then it's problematic. Like you, JD, for example, you have trust issues because you don't know what your friends' intentions are, but you're still able to come to work, have a really good working relationship with Bel, for example, and me, hopefully, even though I invoke Liverpool again. That's okay. It's great, right? Yeah. But if it comes to a point where, you come in, you sit down in your chair and you don't want to talk to anybody because I don't know what Bel's going to say to me, I don't know what Joel's going to say to me, right? Then that's a problem.
When it interrupts a regular life, I guess, right?
Yes, correct.
Every disorder, when it starts interrupting your regular life, then you know something is not right there.
It's clinical already.
Yeah. But how do you treat someone with trust issues? Is therapy enough, or do they need medication as well?
No. Okay. So the thing with medication is, again, if the cause of the problem isn't biological or medical in nature, like some kind of neurotransmitter imbalance and all that, more often than not, medication is not going to treat the cause of the problem. It's going to treat the symptoms, right? So, let's say, for example, you have a fever and you go to a doctor and they give you fever medication, right? But and your fever goes down, but that fever could be caused by dengue, could be caused by COVID-19, caused by the common flu, right? So when we talk about this kind of trust issues, for example, even if you take medication, it might calm you down, but the cause for the distrust is still going to be there. The cause of the problem is still going to be there. And that's when talk therapy, what we do or counselors do, for example, that's when that kicks in and we try and understand where it comes from. So to answer your question, Bel, how we treat trust issues is that I'm trying to understand where it comes from. Like JD said just now, it's because I've been betrayed or cheated on, or something bad's happened in the past that's caused me to be distrustful, right? And which is not a bad thing because you're trying to protect yourself, right? But when it comes to a point where it's dysfunctional, we need to try and find a better way to go about things. So instead of not trusting anybody, right, what we can do is we trust only certain kinds of people, right? Maybe people who are a bit more, in our immediate private circles, like our family members, our spouse, our children, for example. Our outside people we're a bit more careful about. Then it's more functional. It's more moderated, so to speak. It's not so extreme.
Then if you're betrayed by the people in your inner circle, then you're
doomed.
You're doomed.
Yeah. Then maybe you need to make better choices.
Better choices in life. Maybe you're better off on your own.
Yeah.
All right. I think we can get to our final question now. Someone sent us a message on our DG Light line. Is belief in conspiracy theories a sign of mental health issues? For example, UFO sightings and others.
Predators.
Yeah. Is belief in conspiracy theories a sign of mental health issues? I mean, some people are just curious, right? I mean,
he says here, and of Liverpool winning.
It's a conspiracy theory.
No, if you believe in that they'll constantly win, then you have issues. But anyway, right? But conspiracy theories, I believe in conspiracy theories and stuff like that sometimes.
Some people just like challenging the norm, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't think it's a mental health disorder. I think it's something like you guys said, like it's interesting. It's it's a point of interest. People. It's a conversation piece as well. I mean, if you start off a relationship or conversation by saying things like, I think the Earth is flat, you definitely don't get people to talk to you, right? Definitely, right?
Or not.
So no, I don't. Or not. Yeah. That's true. That's true. So I think what happens is that we need to. I don't think it's a mental health disorder, not at all. I think more likely it's like I said, it's not an issue, but I think if it's gone to a point where you start living the conspiracy theory, right? Like for example, you think that aliens exist, which I honestly personally think that given how big the universe is, it's definitely true, right?
Yeah,
exactly. But if you're going to start wearing like tinfoil hats because you're worried that people are going to send messages to you or mind control you and things like that, then it's gone to extreme, right? So like we talked about earlier about that functioning, right? It stops you functioning. Because if you rocked up in a tinfoil hat, JD, I don't think you're going to be on air for a very long line. That sense, right? So I think that's where it is, right? I think it's how we having the theories is fine, not an issue. But if it dominates your life, right, then it's a problem, right? It starts interfering with your life, then it's a problem, definitely.
How about those people who think that, like, any type of mental health disorders is like you're being possessed by the supernatural? I think We see a lot of that here in the Asian culture, right? Like if you're hearing things, oh no, you're possessed.
When I used to work in a hospital, right, it wasn't uncommon that people would come see a psychiatrist or psychologist as the last ditch attempt to save someone. They would have gone to BOMOs, Ustazas, witch doctors, and everything, all done already, prayers and all that. Then all cannot, then they come see a hospital, right? And honestly speaking, the universe is big enough, crazy enough that I cannot say for a fact that it's not true. I don't know, right? But from my framework, from my perspective, right, a lot of times when people talk about spiritual possessions, people talk about kena rasak hantu and all that kind of things, right?
Yeah.
That I can see it from a psychological perspective. I can make sense of it. I can diagnose it, and then give you a plausible psychological explanation for what's going on. So that much I can say, lah. So from my perspective, I can understand it, and then I can provide interventions or treatment for it, right? But I cannot safely also say that no, there is no such thing as spiritual possession or things like that, because I don't know. I'm not. We're not God, lah. Basically, lah. We don't know what's going on. But so for some people who thinks that it's a spiritual possession, I see it as schizophrenia, for example.
Okay.
Some
Okay.
people say that I've got a jinn controlling me. That's why I'm so OCD. I see it as OCD. You manage it, then you feel better about it. But more important than what I think is really what the clients think, lah, right? Because if they truly 100% believe that it's a spirit inside of them, there's nothing I can say that was going to change that. There's nothing I can treat. There's no way I can treat them to make them change, get better in that sense, right? So in my hospital work, for example, I've actually brought in like ustazas into my clinic, my room, so that we can speak together with the patient to help them better understand the spiritual teachings and things like that, and try and frame it from a psychological perspective as well. So they get two barrels of the gun, so to speak, right? So that's how I try and integrate a little bit of these spiritual practices. But there's actually something called paranormal psychology, Bel. Not so
Really?
popular here in Malaysia, but yeah, in the UK and things like that. Spirituality and psychology is something really big that's coming up in Malaysia as well. I know of a supervisor who is actually going into the Orang Asli settlements in Malaysia and understanding their beliefs on things and how that compares or correlates with our modern psychology teachings and things like that, which is actually quite fascinating. So it's actually something that is there, and now then we're trying to understand it, but it's hard. It's going to take us a long time before we get anywhere close to bridging of the two, in that sense.
No, but the thing is, like spirituality, it's something from culture and everything. But there's got to be some answer to when people don't believe scientific fact.
Yeah.
You know, like the world is flat. There's no way that is. And I have an issue with anti-vaxxers in a way, right? Because like it's scientific fact that if you don't have vaccines, you will pick up all kinds of stuff, right?
Yep.
It's scientific
Yep.
fact.
Yep.
What is it inside that makes them constantly think that that's not true? It's got to be a mental health condition to not want to believe scientific fact, isn't it?
Okay, let's use the anti-vaccine. Probably I'm going to get some heat for this, but it's alright. I think it's worth talking about. I think with the anti-vaxxer movement, even the original article that was written about anti-vaccine, like people shouldn't vaccinate and things like that, right, has been debunked. The person has come up and said,
Yeah.
I did it for likes and whatever it is, right? I think when a person who reads those kind of information and they get they will get triggered by it, and there's a lot of fear and anxiety about it, right? I think people believe in anti-vaccinations or flat Earth, whatever it is, right? Because they have a lot of fear, and these theories and these ideas give them some semblance of control, right? So, like the anti-vaxxers, for example, autism, like one of the major things they say is that vaccinations give kids autism or ADHD and things like that. And the fear factor here is with autism and ADHD, there's really no way we can A, predict or B, control or C, treat it, basically, right? Because it's something that is going to be there for perpetually. And the best thing that we can do, or modern science has taught us that we can do, is to manage the situation to give the person the best life they can lead. So if you think about it from that perspective, it's really damn scary. It's like COVID-19, there's no cure in sight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So when I am able to exert some control, if I don't vaccinate my kids, they have less chances of getting autism, for example, or at least they falsely believe that, right? Then it's suddenly so much more gratifying to them. Oh, I can do that. I can keep my kids safe, right? So that's I think that's why a lot of people are so vehemently invested in that kind of idea or the conspiracy theories like that. Same goes with flat earthers as well. Perhaps, let's say, for example, they're afraid of traveling, they're afraid of the unknown, right? So by saying the Earth is flat, this is all we know, and we shouldn't go anywhere else outside of that. I'm not a flat earther. I haven't read much into it, so I don't know the full idea behind it. But it could be that as well. There's a lot of anxiety that they feel for some reason, and they're trying to exert some control over it, right? But this is just one perspective. Obviously, there are other perspectives about it. But oftentimes, it's that measure of control or knowing what I can do about things that make things better that people. That's why they're so invested in the conspiracy theory or whatever you like in that sense.
But not a mental health disorder, not all the
No,
time.
not yet, lah. Not yet, lah. So, like I said, until a point where, like, for example, we've heard of stories where kids have died because they haven't gotten treatment for whatever disorders or illnesses they have. Then I think it's gotten to a point where this person just needs psychological care and support, lah, right? Because it's causing harm to other people,
Yeah.
right? But short of that, if it doesn't, then you do you, lah. I think it's okay, lah, right?
All right.
All right. I think that's all the time we have for today's Facebook Live.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Really,
much,
really fun.
Dr.
Thanks for having me.
Joel Low. Hopefully, in 2 weeks, we'll be able to see you back in the studio.
Yes, I will see you guys
and we
back in
can
the studio,
take
definitely.
calls from our listeners.
Yes. And then listeners, you can get in touch with Dr. Joel, have a chat with him, and then then we'll get into the deeper stuff with you, right?
Yeah.
But once again, thank you so much, Dr. Joel Low, clinical psychologist and director at the Mind Psychological Services and Training.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us today
Thank
for our
you.
Facebook Live and for all your questions as well.
Thanks.
Thank you. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.